it's about saying, hey, between the two of us, between the five of us, between the company of us, if we come together, it will be better and we will succeed.
If we come together, we will succeed. The question is, how do we do that in today's world?
How do we do? Okay, so now, and I love this because we get down to really, really, this is people look and go, I got it. Collaboration is everything. I have with me Lois Sonstegard with me, one of the amazing authors from the Ennobled for Business anthology. And Lois, welcome to the show. Your chapter, Business and Collaboration to Thrive.
You got it.
You related it. So tell me your chapter. It's all about collaboration. It's all about business and collaborating, and that's the way that we move forward. Tell us why you wrote the chapter and tell us what your mission is.
Okay, I'd love to do that. So you know what, Marie, we tend to think of, in business anyway, that cash is king. And it is important, but I will say the truth today is collaboration is king. It's the new asset. If you don't have it, you're not going to be competing very shortly down the road. And you can say, why do I say that, right? Well, because businesses are really being stretched. They're being pressured. The economy is not good, right? Supply chain, we've got lots of supply chain problems. And then you look at talent, acquisition and retention, companies are hurting. And there's all sorts of reports coming out in terms of what's going on with the labor force. But the reality is, you look at Gallup's research, 24% only trust their leaders today. Only 24. So if you have a team of 10, 2.5 of them don't trust you, the other 7.5 do not. What does that do to your ability to work with a team? And then you look at engagement. 3 out of 7 are engaged, or 3 out of 10, the other 7 are not. So if you've got a team of 10, 3 people are pulling the weight for 10. So before COVID, we were told that 85% of people in the workplace were overwhelmed and stressed. That was before COVID. Then COVID happened. And all of the stress that went on top of it, it's no wonder people were depressed and overwhelmed, right? You know, we saw the need for therapy just going way up because people were at a loss in terms of what to do. And so that stress level has only been compounded. It's happening within the companies, and then it's happening extra to the company. So company to company, we're taking those stresses. And so we're having a lot of difficulty knowing how do we navigate, right?
Pull the cards aside. You are a brilliant, intelligent woman. I want to hear your message. You count. What do you mean when you say collaboration?
Collaboration is when 2 or more people work together, and they do it with the intent of not only am I going to win, but you're going to win also. And that is counter to our culture.
Okay. And so it's about saying, hey, between the two of us, between the five of us, between the company of us, if we come together, it will be better and we will succeed.
If we come together, we will succeed. The question is, how do we do that in today's world?
How do we do? Okay, so now, and I love this because we get down to really, really, this is people look and go, I got it. And fourth quarter numbers are coming in, and we know the external, and we also know the internal pressure that even pre-COVID, wow, post-COVID. So there are people leaning in. How
do we do it?
How do we do it?
So this is how you do it. There's 4 basic steps, maybe 5, but they're not complicated, but they're hard to do because of our human nature. So the first, look at the breadth of the group you've brought together. And what do I mean by breadth of group? When we make decisions, we tend to do it. The C-suite gets together, they make a decision, they pass it on to the next level of managers, they get together, they talk about it, they pass it down and down and down and down.
So the top down.
Top down, generally.
Okay.
So here's what's interesting. Beautiful research was done by Francis Galton in 1906. He wanted to prove that the only people who could really get to the truth, that had the facts, that knew how to decide and what needed to happen, was the experts. So he was a statistician and he went about going to prove it. And so he went to a livestock show in London and he's watching this ox being auctioned. And the people at the fair were to guess the dressed weight of the ox. So the ox with its head, its feet cut off and the skin removed, right? So what will that ox weigh at that time? And so he watched the process and it was all complete and the award had been given. He went to the judge and he said, may I have all of your sheets of paper with people's weights on it? And he sat and he lined them up according to who they were. Here is what the judges guessed. Here is what the veterinarians and the experts on animals guessed. Here is what the people who took care of animals guessed. And here is what the people who walked around the fair, just watching what was going on, the curious on-takers, this is what they guessed. So who do you think was closest to the dressed weight of the ox?
The people who took care of the animals and the observers.
Well, that's interesting. Close. So the people who were closest, none of the groups in and of themselves were close. But when he took the mean, so the average of all of the guesses, he was 1 pound from the actual weight.
Okay, so what you're saying is I really want to give people guidance because that's what they need, right? And you have it. So what you're telling me from the study from 1906, right? I have only one piece of furniture that's older than that, which I'm proud of. So with that, it's about consensus. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And it's about getting a breadth of people. It's not just the top, it was getting the onlookers involved as well. So take a look at Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Do you remember that show from years ago? You're probably too young, but it was a show where you were given 15 questions and you had to guess them all correctly. And then you won $1 million. And to help you, you were given 3 lifelines. One, you could ask to have the 4 options reduced to 2. So now you had a 50-50 chance of winning. You could call one of the pre-identified experts before the show, you'd identified these. You could call them and ask them what they thought. Or you could ask the audience. Guess who was closest to the
audience?
Yeah. Okay. Experts were accurate 65% of the time. The audience, 91% of the time.
So what you're saying is that within the company, the people have the answer.
The people have the answer if you're willing to look at them all.
Okay.
Right? The bottom on up.
Okay, cool. So we're starting with, I love this because so what when we're talking about collaboration, only C words, we're talking about collaboration, it's about consensus. And that you have, similar to that, we have everything we need. When companies listen, they have the answer within their ranks.
If they go beyond their ranks.
well, everyone is in the ranks. That's what I consider that.
Yeah.
All right, so that's number one.
Go
and include and listen to all of that. And then what that comes up with, that consensus of all of it within that. Ooh, it's in that fabulous sense where, I don't know, 3 days away from voting and the election consensus. When we all come together and all our voices matter, it really works.
It really works. Okay,
Ooh.
number 2. Are
number
you ready?
2. Oh, love it. Number 2.
People need to be able to independently express their opinions.
They need to be safe.
They need psychological safety. Absolutely. And
Okay.
what has happened today, right? We have a PC culture in which people don't dare speak. People want us, I mean, part of the reason why we have the hybrid movement and people staying at home is they're psychologically safe at home. They don't have to deal with what word is not acceptable today, because what's acceptable today isn't acceptable tomorrow. If I express my opinion on this, who will I offend, right? And so our psychological safety net has shrunk and shrunk and shrunk. And so that desire to really express what you think has begun to disappear. We do what is right and what is expected. We're losing that independent of thinking.
So what is the difference between, and I'm going to use the word authentic, being authentic and then also then offending someone else and really, so there's a balance. Where is the balance of that?
Sure. You can be authentic and speak the truth. You don't have to offend. It depends on how you do it. So let me give you, and we tend to do things in an offensive way because we've seen people do that. Those have been our role models in the past. So let me give you a great example of independence and independent thinking. And it comes from Winston Churchill.
Oh,
Did you ever see the movie The Darkest Hour? Okay, it was about the Battle of Dunkirk. I watched it. Okay, I watched it the first time and loved the story. But then for some reason, recently, I turned it on, watched it again, and I said, oh my goodness, that was the beginning of his moving past the experts to find the solution. And the courage to be independent and look for independent thinking. So this is what happened. He had the war room looking at what were they going to do with Hitler and Mussolini. And part of what he was being challenged to do was to create a treaty with Mussolini and Hitler. The feeling was they're going to invade us anyway, and so let's just have a treaty with them and
buy time,
or maybe we can even bypass it. And the feeling that they were going to be invaded by Germany was so strong. The people in government were asking the king at that time to move his family to Canada where they'd be safe. And he was being pressured to make this decision, and he was struggling. Now, the king did not like Winston Churchill a whole lot because Winston Churchill said things as he thought them. And he was blustery, he was abrasive, and the king found him quite offensive. And so there was this battle going on. The decision needed to be made about were they going to sign a treaty. If they did not, he was going to have to deal with the fact that the British military was in two places. One was in Calais in France, the other was in Dunkirk. And could they get their military out? He reached out to Roosevelt. Roosevelt said, no help coming from here.
Not at that time.
Not at that time. And so without that help, he thought maybe I have to give in and maybe we have to sign this treaty. And he was struggling with it. And so late at night, one night, the king arrives at his house and his wife says, Winston, straighten your shirt. The king is here. And he said, here at my house? And so they were talking, and the king said, I'm in the process. I have to make this decision. What are you thinking, Winston? And Winston says to him, I don't even know my own mind anymore. He said, I'm struggling. I don't know what's right for the country. I don't even know who to talk to anymore. And the king said, I'm here. You can talk with me. And Winston says, but you don't like me. Right? And so Winston says to him, what should I do? The king says, I don't know, but you're very good with people. He said, go ask the people. Well, how do you do that when you're the prime minister and you're being protected? So the next morning, he's on his way to the parliament. The car stops, his limo stops at a stoplight. And as he watches it changing, he realizes he's right outside the underground in London. So he zips out of the car, jumps into the underground before the chauffeur realizes he's gone and he can't find him. And Winston gets on the train and people are trying to pretend they don't know who he is. And, they're very uncomfortable. And finally, he starts a conversation and he says, "This is what I'm struggling with." He said, "We may be invaded. What do you want? What do you want me to do?
What do you want? What do you
What,
want?
what do you want me to do?" And without exception, they all said, "We will fight to the finish. We will do everything we need to fight to the finish." So he got off the train, bypassed the war room that was waiting for his decision, and went immediately to the parliament and made his famous speech about going to war and that they were going to defend Dunkirk. And so he did. But here's what's interesting. Having made that decision, having the people's response, right? He now is faced with another dilemma. He has no way of getting people out of Dunkirk. And if he didn't, the British military would have been demolished. So the decision was made to sacrifice the men in Calais, and they would concentrate on Dunkirk, where the majority of the forces were. And so people said, "We have no ships, we have no way of getting them out." So he said, "Get on the radio and call every fishing boat 30 feet
And there's
or
that
larger,"
enormous movie.
right?
Okay.
And they got the people out. So the
when
people
people
spoke,
are heard,
the people found the
they will
solution.
show up, but they want to be heard.
Exactly.
Okay. So we're talking two things. So we're talking about obviously collaboration. We're talking about consensus through everybody's voice within that consensus. You truly get your answer. And then when you're getting your answer, it's in there. The company has it, and miracles can happen.
Exactly.
Or
So
at least everyday business, right?
that's right. It's
Okay.
the beginning. Number 3, you need to involve people closest to the problem. So whose lives were going to be at stake? The everyday citizen whose cities were going to be invaded, right? Same thing in our workplace. We make decisions about what's supposed to happen in the warehouse. Did we involve the people actually doing the work in what needs to be done and how to fix the problem? So get advice and input from people closest to the problem. C-suite doesn't usually reach down that low.
So again, collaboration is everything.
Collaboration is absolutely everything.
So Lois, tell me a little bit about what you do. You're in academia, and then it has shifted to business now.
So, well, I've done academia, yes, but I started by running women's and children's hospitals. And then during that time was also involved in academia, taught in medical schools, as well as MBA programs, places like that. And then had a manufacturing company, which I developed our own IP, so our patents and trademarks, and took the company to 22 different countries before I sold it. So that's been my background.
So, okay. So within all this, because you're also been there. You've been there in the hospitals with women and children. You've been there as an entrepreneur. You've been there as an inventor. You've been there in manufacturing and collaborating with others. What's next, and what do you want?
So it's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking it. So what I see happening, Maureen, is we have to solve the issue of how we're going to work in our businesses. How do we work more effectively, more efficiently? Because we don't have enough resources. Supply chain is going to continue to be a problem. Labor is going to continue to be a problem. We've got to solve these problems. And it's through collaboration. So what I'm doing is developing processes for collaboration. So within organizations, we can work across silos effectively. And then secondly, for businesses, entrepreneurial businesses, startup businesses, is to bring together collaborative ecosystems so you can work together to actually exponentially grow.
They're looking at they're going to say, I can do this for you. Just like the people on the train with Winston Churchill. What does that mean?
What does it mean? What can I do?
Yes.
I can help you as a business really collaborate, really grow. You can get strong. So here's the myth. The myth is that the opportunities are diminishing. The reality is opportunities are expanding through collaboration.
I love that. Okay. And of course, just for instance, the book, you and I, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't about collaboration and the piece that says that the magic happens in connection and collaboration. And so then, and so too, then Lois will help support companies to make it all come together. That's what you do.
That's what I do.
I love that. I love that already. Everyone, again, it is Lois
Sonstegard. No worries.
Oh, Sonstegard. Love that. And her links will be below where you can contact her. Collaboration is everything. Bye, everybody.
It is. Bye-bye. Thanks.